Beyond the head of Graveyard Holler, there lives a witch who cast a spell to become the most famous horror host in the world. And her name is Goretta.
Don't be scared. Come on in and sit a spell. For the newcomers, Heidi there. I'm Goretta Sin, critter of the night, mother of screams, drinker of Ale 81, first of her name, and the greatest horror movie host in the world. For the rest of y'all, how's your mama and them? Are they holding up okay in this weather? Yeah, that's how it goes. This episode, we're going to be watching one of them old black and whitey. Oh, hey, Stephanie. Yeah, this episode is about a movie from the 1960s. It's in black and white. No, it's not Psycho. No, it's not The Night of the Living Dead. No, it's not the original Little Shop of Horrors. Dang it, Stephanie, just let me get it out. Tonight's episode is Horror Hotel. We'll be right back with the movie. This episode of Goretta was brought to you by Graveyard Holler, Bolorama, Bar, and Outdoor Grill. Make sure you go on down on Fridays to support DJ Webhead as she journeys into the Danceverse at 11 p.m. Half price off your first pitcher of blood with promo code Goretta. That's promo code Goretta for half off your first pitcher of blood. Now, I am not changing today's movie, and that's final. I already did all the reading and stuff. If you want to suggest a movie, you got to put it in the comments like everybody else. Sorry, folks. Today's movie is Horror Hotel, or if you live outside of the US of A, you might know it as City of the Dead. It was released in the US in 1961, England in 1960, produced by Vulcan Films, directed by John Moxey, screenplay by George Baxt, and starring Venetia Stevenson, Patricia Jessel, and Old Saruman himself, Christopher Lee. Let's get into it. The film opens on fog. Slowly, a crowd of people emerges, and we realize it's pilgrim times. The locals have found themselves a witch, and they are setting up for a barbecue.
Bring out Elizabeth Selwyn.
Elizabeth Selwyn is dragged out looking fierce as all get out. Some lady calls her a witch like it's a bad thing and gets what's coming to her. A big old gob of spit in the eye. But that only forestalls the inevitable. She is dragged to the stake while the townsfolk sing their favorite song, Burn, Witch, Burn. But Elizabeth does see one friendly face in the crowd, her buddy Jethro. She calls out to him for help, which makes the townspeople suspicious.
Jethro! Jethro Kane, hast thou consorted with the witch Elizabeth Selwyn? No.
Well, that clears that up. I guess none of the townsfolk notice that Jethro spends the rest of this scene praying to Lucifer.
Help her, Lucifer. Help her. Help her, Lucifer. Help her.
Elizabeth is tied to the stake, formally charged with witchcraft, and then the fire is lit.
Elizabeth Selwyn, on this 3rd day of March, in the year of our Lord 1692, we, the people of Whitewood, Massachusetts, condemn thee as a witch.
But As the flames kick up, thunder rolls, and a shadow descends upon the crowd. The devil has arrived! Elizabeth and Jethro swear to serve him for all time, and in a classic witchy move, Elizabeth curses the town.
Make this city an example of thy vengeance. Curse it! Curse it for all eternity!
The townsfolk do not take kindly to this, so they kick up their favorite song again, Burn, Witch, Burn. Burn, witch, burn, witch. Burn, witch. People in the back, burn, witch. Burn, witch. Over there, burn, witch. Only the ladies, burn, witch.
Burn, witch, burn, witch, burn, burn, burn.
Suddenly, we're in a college classroom where Christopher Lee, as Professor Driscoll, is telling the story of the scene we just saw play out to a group of mostly bored college students. One of the students isn't bored, though. Her name is Nan Barlow, and she is all about some witches. She tells Driscoll she wants to go to New England to do first-hand research for her paper for his class.
What I'd really like to do is to get a room in the smallest, oldest town in New England I can find. Check through all the town hall records, recheck the libraries, talk to the Puritan descendants, make a really thorough investigation.
Lucky for her, Driscoll knows the perfect spot, Whitewood. And he knows the owner of the local inn, the Raven's Inn. So she'll definitely have a place to stay. How thoughtful! Now, no one that Nan knows thinks that witchcraft is a suitable subject to study. Not her brother, Dick, who is a professor at the college.
Surely any good encyclopedia will give you all the nonsense you want to know about witchcraft. Black magic, sorcery. To me, it's nothing but fairy tale mumbo-jumbo. I'm a scientist, Driscoll.
And definitely not her good-for-nothing, worthless boyfriend, Bill.
This isn't about anything real. This is just superstitious people burning silly old women.
But that doesn't matter to Nan. She takes off for Whitewood anyway. On the way, she stops for gas, and guess what? The gas station attendant is a harbinger.
Whitewood?
Am I that far away?
No, ma'am, not far. Not many God-fearing folks visit Whitewood nowadays. If I were you, I'd...
If you'll excuse me, I'm in a hurry. Which way is it?
Nan drives through some heavy fog and sees a man standing at the crossroads. She stops for him because I reckon she's not the true crime type. And it turns out he's headed to Whitewood to stay at the Raven Inn, just like her. And he's looking pretty familiar. It's Jethro. They arrive and Nan takes note of a spooky graveyard near the inn and wonders if any witches are buried there. Jethro says there are. Duh. And then he just straight up disappears. Nan just takes that whole man disappearing in stride, goes into the inn where she meets a housekeeper named Lottie who can't speak and is clearly terrified. They have a brief interaction before the innkeeper comes stalking out of the shadows. You know, this innkeeper looks awful familiar too. And her name is Mrs. Newless. Mrs. Newless tells Nan that there is no room at the inn. But then Nan mentions Professor Driscoll's name, and suddenly there's one room at the inn. And I reckon that's the end of the first act. Maybe. What are old Lizzie Selwyn and Jethro doing up amongst the living? Did her curse on the town work? How is Professor Driscoll wrapped up in all this? And what the heck is... Lord, who is calling me right now in the middle of my show? Everybody's always calling me. Everybody always needs me the second I'm doing something else. I tell you, if I were just sitting here doing nothing, ain't nobody gonna call. Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi, Mr. Robar. It's my landlord.
It is I, Christopher T. Robar.
Yes, sir, I'm aware of that. How can I help you?
I have a question for you.
Sure. What's your question?
What is a vegan zombie's favorite food?
I don't know. What is a vegan zombie's favorite food?
Grains!
Okay. Bless his heart. So here's where we are. A witch named Elizabeth Selwyn cursed the town of Whitewood before being burned at the stake. 200 years later, Nan Barlow, a college student, is taking a course on witchcraft. She wants to write her paper on Whitewood, so her creepy professor sets her up with a room at the Raven Inn. The innkeeper there is clearly Elizabeth Selwyn, and her brother in Satan, Jethro, is moping around the town too. So Mrs. Newlish shows Nan to her room, and we see that Jethro is creeping in the shadows behind them. Nan starts unpacking, but she trips over the rug in her room to discover a trap door. There doesn't seem to be a way of opening it, so she just covers it back up. Listen, y'all, if you are ever staying somewhere and you notice that there is a trap door in the room in which you are sleeping, leave. Nan, however, does not leave, but she does go and check out the town. The townspeople are weird. When she tries to enter the church, she is met by Reverend Russell, who lays some truth down upon her.
For 300 years, the devil has hovered over this city, made it his own. The people in it are his. Evil has triumphed over good here. Leave Whitewood. Leave Whitewood tonight. I beg of you.
Nan also meets Patricia Russell, who runs the local antique store. Patricia seems to be the only normal person in Whitewood. Nan asks her if she has any research material on witches, and Patricia loans her a book called A Treatise on Devil Worship in New England. Nan takes the book back to her room and begins reading up on Satan lovin' in the olden times when she hears chanting coming from the trapdoor in her room. Listen, y'all. If you, for some reason, have not immediately left the place you are staying with the trap door, please, 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 go ahead and leave once you hear chanting coming out from under the trap door. Nothing good will come of this. To her credit, Nan does go straight to Mrs. Newlish, but Mrs. Newlish explains that the brightness of the gas lamps have not changed.
I've heard some strange noises in my room.
Oh, possibly the water and the pipes. This is a very old inn.
No, it seemed to be coming from the cellar underneath.
I hardly think so, Miss Barlow. The cellars do not extend beneath your room.
But then why is there a trapdoor in the floor?
The ground was filled in many years ago to strengthen the foundations of the building.
But I'm sure
Well, if you insist, I will come and see. I don't hear anything.
Well, just a few minutes ago. Never mind, I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
Incredibly, Nan goes right back into her room with the trapdoor and the chanting floor and puts on her nightgown and goes back to reading her book. Lottie enters and is obviously trying to warn Nan of something, but Mrs. Newlish rushes in and shoos her away. Mrs. Newlish is very interested in Nan's book. So Nan tells her all about the history of witchcraft in Whitewood.
Why, it's fascinating. The things I've learnt. I bet you don't know the half of it. Listen to this. On Candlemas Eve, February 1st, in the year 1692, a coven of witches, a coven that's 13, some men, some women, whose power came from the devil, gathered beneath the Raven's Inn to perform a black mass in the honor of Lucifer. The witch Elizabeth Selwyn, later to be burnt at the stake, marked a young girl for sacrifice, by obtaining an object of value belonging to her with which to call her, and leaving in its place a dead bird and a sprig of woodbine. The witches sacrificed her on the altar and drank her blood at the hour of 13. What's the hour of 13?
I guess they ain't got no military time in Whitewood. Mrs. Newless tells Nan that she should join the other guests in the lobby. They're dancing. Nan says she'll come dancing in a little while, but she's misplaced her locket. She swore she left it on the dresser, but now it's missing. Mrs. Newless says she'll ask Lottie. Yeah, I'm sure it's Lottie. A little later, Nan can hear loud music coming from the lobby. She goes to her door to check it out and casts her eyes upon one raging dance party. How could she pass that up? So she starts to get ready, and we really need to talk about her underwear. So, this whole time, we've been seeing Nan lounging in a quilted nightgown that my granny wore all the time. Underneath this fluffy, luxurious quilted nightgown, Nan has been wearing a fully boned corset, stockings, the whole shebang. Clearly, Nan and I have different versions of what being comfortable in reading are like. So anyway, Nan finishes getting ready and steps out of her room to see no one. Everyone's gone. Everyone except Mrs. Newless, that is, who tells Nan that all the other guests have gone off to
services.
Thanks to a handy calendar on the wall, the audience can see it as Candlemas Eve. Where have we heard that before?
Beretta was filmed in front of a dead studio audience. Don't be scared, folks. Come right on in and set a spell with your host. She's the mother of screams, the L8 drinking, never stinking, the hostess with the ghostess, the critter of the night herself, Greta.
Fairy honey.
Yes'm.
I told you I didn't need an announcer.
Okay.
Also, an announcer usually does the announcing. It's the beginning of a show, and I'm right here in the middle of my review. I swear, working with Beelzebub gets me mixed up with the weirdest people. So anyway, back at the Raven Inn, Nan goes into her room and finds a dead bird with a needle through its heart in the exact spot where her locket was. She tears off to find Mrs. Newless to ask what in the actual turds is going on, and finds that she is gone. She also finds that there's a branch stuck to the door of her room. It's 12:45 a.m. by the clock, and her floor is chanting again. That's when Nan finally figures out how to open the trap door in her room. Ignoring all sense, she goes down into the trap door with a flashlight like Nancy Drew. Suddenly, she's nabbed by a couple of cloak-wearing fools and dragged over to the altar to be sacrificed. And who is holding the knife? Why, it's none other than Mrs. Newless, who reveals to us in an earth-shattering turn that she is Elizabeth Selwyn?
I am Elizabeth Selwyn.
Okay, it's not that much of a reveal, but it does play right into this amazing transition scene. Welcome to the second movie in this movie. That's right, from the makers of Horror Hotel comes Horror Hotel Part 2, The Hotelling. Only it's in the same movie. By the way, there's actually a reason why the structure of this movie is so jankety. According to Wikipedia, George Braxt originally wrote this script for a TV show. and everything from this point in the movie on out was added by the producer Milton Subotsky to flesh it out to feature length. So, sorry if I gloss over a lot in the second half of this movie, but it's a completely different story. Nan's brother and worthless boyfriend Bill both start searching for her and head to Whitewood separately for reasons. Bill wrecks his car on the way to Whitewood because he's spooked by an image of Elizabeth Selwyn. But Dick makes it. He stays in the same room that Nan did at the Raven's Inn, and gets mixed up with Patricia and her granddaddy, the Reverend Russell, who it turns out are descendants of the Pilgrims what did old Lizzie Selwyn in back in the witch-burning days. Eventually, the preacher explains what the heck is supposed to be going on now that this is a movie instead of a TV show.
For 200 years, the people of Whitewood have carried out rituals that mock the church's teaching. I know these people have a pact with the devil to worship him and do his works. In return, he gives them eternal life. And to seal this bargain, they must sacrifice a young girl on 2 nights of the year, Candlemas Eve and the Witch's Sabbath.
And when is the Witch's Sabbath?
Tonight.
Then a dead bird and a sprig of woodbine make it clear that Patricia is next up on the chopping block for the Sabbath. They all try to sensibly get out of town, but it doesn't work. Patricia gets caught and the preacher dies, but not before telling Dick how he can kill all of those witches.
The shadow of the cross. Use the cross. I adjure thee, O creatures of salt, by the living God.
Mr. Russell?
Hey look! Bill made it!
Maitland! Maitland, what's happened?
No one cares. Dick goes down the trap door looking for Patricia. He finds Lottie's dead body. She got strangled by Jethro. And he sees Patricia tied to the altar. Christopher Lee is there too. It turns out he is from Whitewood, and he loves him some Satan. Dick and Pat try to get away. They do not get away. The sacrifice is ramping up again when Bill arrives, but he saves the day by getting a cross up out of the graveyard into the air so the shadow falls on the witches. Once he does that, Dick says the magic words, and the witches catch fire. Dick checks on Pat, who says she thinks she's okay. Bill, finally having made himself useful, dies. Then, when Dick goes back into the Raven's Inn, we get this.
You stay here.
So that's the movie. It's a weird duck, being that it was originally a TV pilot. Kinda like Mulholland Drive if you think about it. But John Moxey, respectfully, is no David Lynch. This movie is B-O-R-I-N, boring. Seriously though, I think that it's fair to think of Horror Hotel as an artifact of its time. You know, a time where people went to movie theaters because they just didn't have a lot of other things going on. Like a lot of movies made in the 50s and 60s, it seems very slow to the modern eye, even though there are lots of crazy things happening in it. Is it worth the watch? Sure. It's fun, and there's a handful of cool shots, but really I would rate it as a great movie to fall asleep to. I've heard that the good folks over at Riff Tracks have taken a crack at it, and I think that that might be the best use for it.
Hey, I'm back. I got you some supplies. Whiskerate it.
I don't remember asking you for any supplies today, Barry.
Yeah, well, but I figured that you probably needed some, so I thought it'd be helpful to be proactive, and seeing as how you are a witch and all, I figured you probably needed some witch supplies.
Well, I reckon it's never a bad idea to have the cupboard stocked up.
Yep.
Now, what'd you get me, though?
Oh, take a look.
Okay, well, I see needles. Those are good. I can use them. There's a whole lot of sticks in here.
Them ain't just any kinds of sticks, Miss Coretta. Them's woodbines.
Barry?
Yes'm.
Is there a bunch of dead birds in the bottom of this bag?
Well, why don't you take a look and find out?
Barry, there's a bunch of dead birds in the bottom of this bag.
Yep.
Honey, this is a movie. It ain't a documentary. It's for fun. Now, I'll keep the needles, but I ain't never done a single spell what called for the body of a dead bird.
Oh.
Now, I need you to just go dispose of them.
Okay. All right.
And you go ahead and do that. Well, that's the end of our show. Join us next time when we'll be watching the ultimate prom makeover movie, Carrie. Barry, none of them birds you killed better be crows. I ain't trying to start no 100-generation blood feud with them Corvuses. You know they don't forget.